As I'm sure many of you know, former President Donald Trump absolutely wiped the floor last night in the Iowa caucuses. Literally, there is footage of him getting down and wiping the floor. Just kidding. That didn't happen, though. Honestly, it would have been really funny had it happened because, my gosh, that guy had a stunning victory. At 51%, he earned 51% of the vote in Iowa last night. Ron DeSantis at second place came in at 21.2%, which is not bad, but really not great considering that the one right above him was a startling 30 points ahead of him. Nikki Haley came in third place, just below Ron DeSantis at 19.1%. And Vivek Ramaswamy, unfortunately, did not have the 1776 moment that his campaign had predicted and hoped for. He came at 7.7%. Mr. Ramaswamy gave what I thought was a very gracious speech when he suspended his campaign last night. He said that his whole campaign was based on telling the truth. And he said the truth is that we did not pull out the victory that we had hoped. And thus, Mr. Ramaswamy said that he was throwing his full support behind the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, who he calls a fellow America First candidate. It is honestly shocking to me how people still are shocked why former President Donald Trump does so well. I have been on Twitter and watching the news and, reading editorials where people are saying how amazing it is that a man who is facing 4 indictments and who has said such despicable things and who allegedly incited an insurrection is being teed up to be the next nominee for the Republican Party. So today I want to spend a little bit of time telling people why it is that Trump won so hugely last night, and why it is likely, in the case of a free and fair election in 2024, that he will probably win again. And by the way, I just want to pause and add a little asterisk because, of course, I'm going to be called an election denier for having added that in, saying that if the election is fair in 2024. Let me tell you why I said that. We know that big tech was hugely instrumental in suppressing conservative content in the lead up of the 2020 election. We know that Twitter met with FBI Weekly to suppress such content. In fact, the FBI wired Twitter $3.4 million mysteriously. This was uncovered during the Twitter files. They wired that money during the 2020 presidential election cycle. We know that Twitter removed the Hunter Biden laptop story in the end of October, right before the November election. Many voters say that they actually would not have voted for President Joe Biden had they known that the contents of that laptop story were in fact verified, because it revealed that the Bidens were getting bribes from nationals in China, Romania, and Ukraine, etc. So that is just to say there is evidence that in some ways the 2020 election was not fair. Does that mean that it's stolen? No, but it does mean that it was not fair, specifically with regard to big tech. And now we are seeing that there are many states that are trying, and indeed have succeeded, at least for now, taking Trump off of the ballot. States such as Colorado and Maine, to name a few examples. So even that alone, putting in the line that if it is a free and fair election in 2024, I think Trump will win, that is another thing that people are surprised at or think is so terrible. So forgive me, I just had to add that in, lest I be called a name. But I really do want to spend a few moments explaining this phenomenon, because it's only going to get more apparent, and it's only going to become louder as the primary season goes on, once he secures the nomination and when there is the face-off between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And I wish Americans could understand this. The reason why so many people support Donald Trump is not because they are secretly racist. It is not because they are secretly homophobic or transphobic or anti-immigrant or anti-walrus or whatever the heck these charges are. It is because they are sick to death of the system right now in the United States of America. And I think that we need to really look at this. People on both sides have to understand this. whether or not you support Donald Trump, this is coming from someone who would probably vote for someone different, who probably will vote for someone different in the primary. I probably would have voted for Vivek Ramaswamy. Unfortunately, he dropped out, and I will probably vote for Ron DeSantis in the primary. So this is coming from someone whose first choice in the primary is not Donald Trump. We need to, instead of vilifying people who vote for or support or praise Donald Trump, we need to understand why they do what they do. And again, the reason is not because of some intrinsic, insidious bigotry towards fellow Americans. It is because the system, as it stands now, is not working for many Americans. Okay, what do I mean by the system? Since President Biden took office in 2021, over 7 million undocumented immigrants have poured across the southern border. This is not a number that I made up. This is according to the Department of Homeland Security. These immigrants have come into various cities and they have exhausted resources. They have exhausted taxpayer money. They have been put up in churches, in hotels, and as we recently saw in New York, in schools. And everyday Americans may have sympathy, as of course I do, for the many immigrants who want to come to this country in a hope of a better life. However, it is not fair for American taxpayers to be paying for people who are not citizens to enjoy the resources which should be the beneficiaries of said taxpayer. That is reason number one. Reason number two is that Americans are sick to death of sending their children to school and having their children come home blabbermouthing about some intersectional God knows what that they learned in schools. This DEI CRT push is not a conspiracy theory. I have covered it many times on my show. In fact, recently I did a show where a 9th grade public high school student here in California emailed me his ethnic studies curriculum. Ethnic studies is a course which is now required in the state of California in order to get a high school diploma. He sent me this ethnic studies curriculum, and it was just page after page of woke diktats, trigger warnings, intersectionality maps, oppressor versus oppressed, privileged versus challenges way of dividing people. This is everywhere. In the state of California, they have all of these parts of the State Department of Education codes which instruct people to teach these DEI diktats. The Department of Education in Oregon says that finding one right answer in math is white supremacy. In Arizona, the Department of Education had a chat room online that they linked for students as young as 10 years old to go on in order to talk about sex and gender without their parents' permission. In the state of New Jersey, the New Jersey Department of Education said that they will punish school districts and teachers which do not teach their gender instructions to students. The largest math conference in the country of public school teachers who teach mathematics all across the United States held a seminar, held a meeting where they had various seminars where they taught these teachers how to undo racism in mathematics. This is why Donald Trump is getting 51% of the vote in Iowa. Again, it's amazing to me that we have to explain this. It's the immigration problem. It's the education problem. It's the fact that China has come in and infiltrated into our country. They're buying farmland. They sent a spy balloon in the early weeks of 2023. They are poisoning the minds of children through TikTok and WeChat. They opened a spy base on Cuba. They have bribed certain leaders, including the President of the United States, okay? It is not because these Trump supporters hate Black people that they are voting for Trump. No, it is because of all of the aforementioned and God knows many more reasons. And so instead of vilifying these people, why don't we attempt to understand where they are coming from? I just want to give a few more examples here because this is so important and a theme that I will really be hammering home on this show in the subsequent months. Voters whether or not they actually like or support Donald Trump. They can see the way that the mainstream media and the establishment in this country is trying to steer the reins away from the will of the American people, the voters, who have every democratic right to make their own decision for president, and instead trying to bend that will towards the mainstream media's own preferences. Let's watch, for instance, what happened last night on MSNBC when Rachel Maddow said that they would not air Trump's live speech, his victory speech after the Iowa caucuses.
I'm sorry, I just have to do a little bit of business just for a second. At this point in the evening, the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving his victory speech. We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech, if there's anything noteworthy, something substantive and important. The reason I'm saying this is, of course, there is a reason that we and other news organizations have generally stopped giving an unfiltered live platform to remarks by former President Trump. It is not out of spite. It is not a decision that we relish. It is a decision that we regularly revisit. And honestly, earnestly, it is not an easy decision, but there is a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things. That is a fundamental truth of our business and who we are. And so his remarks tonight will not air here live. We will monitor them and let you know about any news that he makes.
Let the American people decide for themselves if what Trump is saying is untrue, or if it is something that they find to be objectionable. What MSNBC and all of these news networks, and they are not the only ones who have come out and said that they will not air parts or any of Trump's live speeches. What they should do is they should air it, and if they like, afterwards, they can have all their commentators come on and identify parts of the speech that they deem to be objectionable. But what the American people object to here is the fact that they're not even being given the opportunity. And this is not just with regard to cable news. This is going online to various social media platforms, the biggest, of course, being Meta, and having conservative content be suppressed or having Trump content be suppressed. And so it's just interesting that the people who are so motivated to get Trump out of the political arena are in fact fueling the fire. They're giving the Trump base even more of a reason to want to vote for him. And the final thing that I'll say is, and this is not an original take, I wish I could remember the name of the editorial writer in the Wall Street Journal, but there's a recurring one who always writes about this. He says that it is actually probably the goal of the Democratic Party and of the Biden campaign to have Trump be the Republican Party nominee. He says that, this writer that is, says that they actually want the Trump base to believe that the media and big tech is rigging things. They want the Trump base to be incensed by the 4 indictments that the former president is facing, 2 state and 2 federal indictments. They want them to think that those indictments are politically motivated, because then they will want to vote for Trump. Trump will be the nominee, and that is how the Democratic Party and the Biden campaign sees Biden's path to victory, because they know, according to this writer, that Biden probably can't win on his own because of his record, but he has a better shot at winning if he is against Donald Trump, because so many people hate Donald Trump and will want to go with President Biden. All very interesting developments. You can count on me here to keep analyzing them as they unfold. But again, if there is one takeaway from all of this, it is that the vast majority of people who are supporting this man are not bigots. They are fundamentally unhappy with the system as it stands. And that is something that all of us need to pay attention to and try to remedy if we want what is best for this nation. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you soon.